Hello, coming to you from one of the exploding cities of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Bryce of Doom Journey. An Out of the Dust board game is a game that gets played that you hadn't previously played in a year or more. In other words, it's been a while since you last played it. But why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. In case you're tuning in for the first time, I'm the moderator of the Out of the Dust Geek List on Board Game Geek. The Out of the Dust Geek List is one of the recurring monthly geek lists on the site, joining such other popular ones like Favorite New to Me of the Month, New to Me a Year Ago, and Games Only I Played. The main focus of this podcast is highlighting some of the Out of the Dust games that I and other contributors to the Geek List have been playing. There are a few other short segments on this podcast as well, sometimes unrelated and sometimes tied in with an Out of the Dust perspective. This is episode 10.
Oh gosh, I'ma say, hey, different enough for me here, I'm flexing.
I had a chance to bring America out of the dust recently. America is the third game in Freedom and Freeze in Ted Alspach's Close Counts Trivia Trilogy that started with Fauna and continued with Terra. Fauna is the most family-friendly of the trilogy because of its theme and the level of knowledge everyone is likely to bring to the table. Terra is probably the toughest part of the trilogy because it draws upon a lot of obscure trivia from across the world that most people probably aren't familiar with. America falls somewhere in the middle, but does have the most refined mechanics of the three. Its inclusion of a space to bid no correct answer elevates the game above its predecessors. I last played this game 1 year, 2 months, and 19 days ago, and was surprised this got dusty at all. It's one of my favorite party games, and I've introduced it to several groups at several different occasions since its release a couple of years ago. It's one I've played multiple times with my father-in-law, who enjoys it quite a bit, and an Independence Day get-together was the occasion of our latest play. My father-in-law brings a lot of American history and Americana in general knowledge to the table, and he's won this game in the past. I managed to win this time thanks to some strategically timed no correct answer predictions, which I beat the other players to when some particularly tough cards came out. One of the wonderful things that makes this a superior trivia game is how important strategic timing is to success. Because there are 3 different areas for any given card that can be bid on, trying to determine which ones the other players are likely to know and bid on before it comes around to me again is a delightful psychological puzzle to try and solve. Let's see what a contributor has brought out of the dust. Garrett Wehrman, username Lemon, brought 2 games out of the dust recently. First was Baseball Highlights, which he last played 1 year, 11 months, and 7 days ago, and currently rates a 7 out of 10. He writes, "It was nice to get Baseball Highlights 2045 back to the table after such a long drought between plays, mainly due to the fact that my opportunities for 2-player gaming have diminished greatly over the past year. We played 3 bye rounds and then a best of 7 in which I got demolished 4 games to 1. This played a lot quicker than I remembered, and I'm looking forward to getting some more plays in." The second game Garrett brought out of the dust was High Society, which he last played 1 year, 2 months, and 3 days ago, and currently rates a 6 out of 10. He writes, "High Society isn't my favorite filler, but if others want to play, I'll join in. I don't enjoy the randomness of the end game, and I think the stipulation that the player with the least amount of money can't win is better used in Hab and Gut. We played the new version, which was a lot nicer to look at, but ultimately I'd rather be playing for sale. Thanks for the contributions, Garrett. Baseball Highlights is one of my favorite deck builders, and one of the few games I've gone out of my way to pimp out the pieces for, getting both the base runner and batter meeples from Meeple Source, which are super awesome." Reaction segment time. So, Gen Con just wrapped up, and one of the interesting things to keep an eye on during the show is always to see if any games come totally out of nowhere and get people talking. I think one of the games that definitely did that this year is KeyForge, the new card game from legendary designer Richard Garfield and publisher Fantasy Flight. They're calling it a Unique Deck Game, or UDG, It's not a CCG because there's no customization to the game. It's not an LCG because there is no regularly released expandable content. The jury is out on if it could be categorized as a TCG, though, because it's uncertain if trading decks is going to be a thing or not. So what's a UDG? Fantasy Flight describes it as a game sold only as decks. But here's the gimmick. Each deck is unlike any other deck in existence, not only in composition of the cards culled from a huge pool that form any one particular deck, but also in the card backs, which just sounds like a production nightmare, but I guess they found a way to make this aspect work. The idea sounds impossible. Make a game in which no two parts of the product are completely alike? Whoa! This is going to be an unsolvable nightmare for collectors and completionists. Those people should probably just pretend this game doesn't exist at all. But as you might imagine for a new game release which has been, so far, long on buzz but short on actual information about how the game plays, a lot of people have been raising a lot of questions about the game. Here's some of what I found out so far. Supposedly, the decks are thematically constructed around unique characters. Apparently, there's a rarity system to the cards that impacts the uniqueness of each deck even more. There's no guarantee that the decks created are remotely balanced. In fact, evidently there's a mechanic in which strong decks can handicap themselves through something called chains. It looks like there's going to be some kind of organized play system for the game as well. But how does the game play? Beats me! The game has just been released and is available for sale, but I haven't actually seen any of the product or rules yet. There's a little bit of information at the game's BGG page. We're starting to get some reports from Gen Con attendees, and a few videos have been posted, and I'm still vague myself on how exactly it's supposed to work. But you know what? I'm intrigued, and at a $10 point of entry for a single deck, I'm tempted to give the game a try. I'm done with CCGs and LCGs too, but I wonder, is a UDG a good fit for me at this point in my board gaming experience? I'll probably find out sooner rather than later. If anyone else is thinking of getting to the game right away, though, they may want to do so right away. It looks like the initial stock of product is quickly selling out from both physical and online retailers. It's also interesting to ponder this. 25 years ago, Richard Garfield revolutionized card games by making them customizable. Did he just revolutionize them again by making them uniquely personalized? Maybe. On the What Have I Been Playing segment this week, I'm going to talk about IceCool, a family dexterity game from designer Brian Gomez. I first learned this game earlier in the year at PretzCon, one of Omaha's local board game conventions. It was on the Play to Win shelf, and I wanted to give it a try because I thought it would be a fun game for the family. I thought it was great fun then, and it's been on my wish list ever since. But fast forward several months, the Union Pacific Museum in Council Bluffs, which is just across the river from Omaha, hosts a monthly free family night where various area organizations host thematic tables in the museum. Spielbound, Omaha's board game cafe, was invited to host one of the July tables with the theme of Chill, Cool Off at the Museum. I volunteered to man this table with my two sons, and I thought, hey, you know what would be the perfect game to feature at the table with this theme? IceCool! So I borrowed the game from the Spielbound library and taught my sons how to play the night before the museum event. They loved it! They love playing tag anyway, but the idea of a game of penguins playing tag? Oh man! IceCool might be the greatest game of all time, according to them. It is lots of fun. The penguin pieces are unlike any other piece I've ever flicked in a dexterity game. The game is the perfect pace too, and the tension the hidden fish scoring offers is delightful. The game is also prone to amazing moments. I was at a Gen Cant event at Game Shop, one of Omaha's many wonderful game stores, over the weekend, and there were lots of games going on at the same time, but the loudest and most exciting game happening almost non-stop was IceCool. Everyone was having a great time with that one. As for the museum event, IceCool was a big hit there too. Because it was a large table, we had another game set up at the same time, just to give patrons options, but everyone gravitated to IceCool. It was impossible to resist those cute, wobbly penguins. The boys had lots of fun teaching the game to other kids, and flicking penguins around with them. After the great weekend with the game, IceCool goes up in priority on my wish list, and I feel safe to say it's going to become a staple regular when my boys and I are at Spielbound together. Obscure Bryce Games segment time. I've had a game sitting on my unplayed shelf for years now called Expedition Altiplano. I've had it so long I don't even remember how or why I got it. It's a small box Madigo game. Yeah, I didn't know Madigo ever made a small box game either. It's designed by Christian Martinez of Inish fame. Interesting trivia about Christian Martinez. Expedition Altiplano was his first game. He didn't have another one published until Inish 10 years later. Expedition Altiplano is an exploration card game exclusively for 2 players. The 2 players share 2 decks that they can draw from each turn. A character deck with various types of people to use in their exploration, and an action deck that, amongst other things, includes location and treasure cards. A player must find an archaeologist from the character deck, a location from the action deck, and only then play a treasure card to find it. The first player to find 2 treasure cards this way is the winner. And it doesn't sound like much of a game, and it must not have made much of an impression on me when I originally read the rules many years ago. I'm not even sure why I kept it around in my collection so long, because I will often trade away a game that has lingered too long on my unplayed shelf if I've lost interest in it or don't think I'll ever actually get to it. I think the only reason I kept Expedition Altiplano around so long was because it was a Madigo game, and I haven't been disappointed by anything they've put out yet. And you know what? This one was better than I was expecting. Grant you, I wasn't expecting much after all these years, but I think I'm actually going to keep this game in my small games bag and play it again when the 2-player only opportunity presents itself. The game is actually quite mean and filled with take-that kinds of cards, but they're spread equally around to both players, and since you know they're coming, and you know you have to play some on your opponents in order to be successful, it's not the type of take-that game that you take personally. My friend Scott and I were the last 2 left of my group a recent Saturday at Spielbound, and I suggested we play it. I had to refresh my memory of the rules since it had been so long since I'd read them, but they're pretty straightforward and not long. I think we were both surprised at how the game developed as we played. There was some real tension as we both claimed a treasure and raced each other to try to find the final one. This race presented some quality tactical decisions of when to draw the powerful character cards, which can shift the balance of the game, and the action cards, which are needed to win. The game didn't overstay its welcome, as a small box card game shouldn't, and I was left impressed with the engaging experience the game offered. This week on Important Moments in Bryce Board Gaming History. The time I played Agricola every day for a month straight. This happened during my transition period from competitive collectible miniatures into board games, when I was buying up way too many board games just because they were cheap, and not looking into them at all first. A lot of these types of games I bought at the Gen Con live auction, which is just about my favorite part of Gen Con. And if it's been harder to get good deals in recent years from the live auction, there's still a lot of excitement wrapped up in it. In the same year I bought the infamous Pirate King, which I discussed at length several episodes ago, I also bought Agricola. This one I had done a little bit of research into beforehand. When it came up for bidding, I knew it was highly ranked, that the designer had done another game I liked, Bonanza. I even knew what the MSRP was. This was in the early years of Agricola, and it was super hot. I had a good idea of what I wanted to pay for the game, and when a new and shrank copy came up on the auction block, I raised my bidding card and left it up with the intention of lowering it if the bidding got past about $35 or so, which would have been half-price MSRP at the time. But much to my surprise, my bidding card was the only one that remained raised when the bidding got up to just $27. Several bidders congratulated me on my good deal as I claimed my prize.